The Parkland shooting survivors, just high schoolers, are driving the national conversation on gun control. Their faces becoming the leaders, the symbols of this movement, but also the target, sadly, of smear campaigns and attacks from some conservative politicians. This fake video going viral on social media showing survivor Emma Gonzalez tearing up the Constitution. Trouble is, that's not what she tore up. Teen Vogue's executive editor setting the record straight. The image was pulled from its cover shoot. The real image on the right, Emma tearing up a Target post, not the Constitution. Gonzalez was also the target of criticism from Republican Representative Steve King's team with this Facebook post calling out Gonzalez for wearing a Cuban flag on her jacket, saying it is ironic that she would wear the flag of a communist country while calling for gun control. Joining me now to discuss our CNN political commentators, Charles Blow, who is a New York Times op-ed columnist, and Matt Lewis, who is a senior columnist at the Daily Beast. Matt, if I could begin with you, what is your reaction to these students being turned into villains online, but also by even some Republican politicians? Are they fair game here?
Well, it's a tough one. On one hand, they are going after Republicans. Marco Rubio, who actually has tried to, I think, present some common sense immigration reform ideas, has been attacked by them from the stage, in fact, at the march on Saturday, and essentially said he's got blood on his hands. So they're coming after Republicans. It's hard to sort of turn the other cheek and not push back. I would say,
well, Matt, though, I would say he's an elected United States senator, an adult, and these kids are teenagers, some of them even tweens, right? I mean, the trouble seems to be that the attacks are personal in many cases rather than on the policy disagreements.
Well, I would say I think that attacking them is fraught with danger, as you're suggesting here. I mean, one is their age. Additionally, look, I mean, they do have a certain moral authority here. They are victims. They were part of this horrible shooting. I don't think that bestows them with absolute wisdom. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're correct about every policy issue, but it does, I think, give them a certain amount of moral authority to talk about this. So I think Republicans really need to tread carefully here when you go after them.
Charles, I wonder what your reaction, beyond the personal attacks and certainly the fake attacks, which no one, including Matt, is defending here. Do you believe that at least on the issues that the students, by putting themselves out there, right, that they can reasonably expect to get at least some pushback?
Yeah, but I don't think you can put aside the false attacks. I think that's part of what is fueling this. And I actually believe that it backfires in a big way. One thing that the kind of fake news, Russia propaganda, all that stuff during the election had was to dampen enthusiasm among young people, particularly young people of color. What you're doing when you're doing false images of people who literally spend there all day doctoring images and putting Facebook filters on things, they can spot a fake image a mile away much better than we old people can. So it just makes your argument feel much more hollow, that you don't have anything real to say, so you're going to the fake stuff. That's bad for you, and it actually energizes them rather than dampens their spirits. I think that is a big backfire move. But in addition to that, these are victims, right? So if you recall during the campaign, there was one of the mothers of one of the people who were killed in Benghazi was a big person in the campaign and actually spoke, I believe, at the Republican National Convention. And people were asked about how to respond to that, and they did the right thing by saying, she's in pain, she deserves to be able to say whatever she wants to say. She put herself out there. She was a part of the political process, and people still did not attack her personally. The fact that Republicans are coming after these kids personally, and even though they're speaking out of their pain, problem.
Yeah, Matt, why can't we do that? And fact is, let's be fair, you'll often hear personal attacks coming from both directions, right? Rather than going after the policy disagreements, you'll go right at, folks get called un-American, these kids. You had an interesting comment from former Senator Rick Santorum, which I'm sure you heard this weekend, saying, well, they should be studying CPR. They shouldn't be, in effect, out there making these political statements here. But why on this issue, Matt, can't it be about the policy and not about the personal side, the politics of personal insult, in effect?
Yeah, look, I agree, and I think they have every right to be making political statements. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them having been a part of this, wanting to go rather than just learning CPR, which I think we should probably all do, but whether or not that would help in this instance. But there's nothing wrong with them advocating public policy positions, whether I like it or not, liberal or conservative. I do think both sides here are making the same mistake about polarization. You know, if you looked at this rally, there's a lot of things that I would agree with them on. A lot of things I think a lot of us, including Marco Rubio, might agree on. For example, raising the age of buying a rifle to 21, as I think they just did in Florida, from 18. Things like background checks. But I think that the tenor of this rally was really, let's attack the NRA, let's attack Republicans, let's kind of go to the hard left. I think that's a mistake. And likewise, I think when Republicans attack these kids and make it personal and vicious, and especially the fake stuff, that's not bringing us together. It's driving us apart.
Yeah. You know, Charles, it's interesting. After this shooting happened, we asked that question that we asked after the Newtown shooting, right? Well, is this time different? Will there be substantive change on these issues? I mean, Matt mentioned one there about raising the age, something the president expressed support for, but then backed off after his meeting with the NRA. You've had some steps, safe schools funding. Looks like bump stocks are going to get banned. But do you think, again, Charles, that this is that it didn't really make a difference, or at least hasn't made a difference yet in terms of real substantive gun legislation changes?
Well, I take issue with that. I believe that it has, right? So in the omnibus bill, one of the things that I've been harping on forever is that the CDC for 22 years was not allowed to study whether or not, study gun violence and how to deal with it.
Great point.
Somebody was able to sneak into this omnibus bill language that clarified that to specifically say that the CDC is, in fact, allowed to research it. I believe that you cannot make sound policy without sound data. And for 22 years, we've had no data whatsoever, or limited data from people who are outside the government, not in the CDC, people who are trying to cobble together enough data to do private studies. This says now that the government can do that work. Now, that doesn't go all the way. We still need to make sure that we have specific federal dollars allocated to do that research, but that's big, because for 22 years, nobody has been able to get that done, and that is now done. And nobody would have done it were it not for these kids on their backs. So I believe,
it's a good point.
They have made
No, it's a good point. And I don't want to take anything away from them. I just, you know, because the political climate, as you know, is a very difficult one, even following a tragedy like this, to get legislation through. Matt, if I could raise another point, because one thing that has struck me about the Parkland students after this shooting is their political savvy on these issues, not just keeping their voices out there, but taking very nuanced positions on a lot of these measures. But one in particular, they noted this weekend their privilege, which is why many of them wanted to share the stage with activists from other shootings who did not get the same attention that their school shooting did. Notable, Mark, is it not, just them trying to, in effect, expand their group of support here on that issue?
Well, look, I mean, I think that they're incredibly well-spoken, incredibly savvy in some ways. I would say, though, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but look, if you actually want to change things in terms of public policy, you're going to need 60 votes in a Senate to get something done. You're going to need some Republicans to be a part of it. You're going to need people like me to support some of these things. And I think there are things that can be done, whether it's background checks, or, you know, raising the age, different things that are sort of reasonable, moderate, modest gun reform positions. You're going to need some Republicans to support it. And I think what this rally and this march, very good at sort of stirring up the left wing, not so good at winning hearts and minds of people who don't necessarily agree with that position. So that's my concern from an analyst standpoint.